Welcome to the Neo operational video series for software version 3.9. These videos are designed for targeted instruction to get you up to speed quickly and simply. This video targets Summary of Changes. While there are hundreds of changes in software version 3.9, there are only a handful that we consider major features. There's a longer list of minor features and then some basic fixes and changes. We'll go over the major features and we'll do a summary of the minor features in this summary of changes video. One of the major ones is a single command line. So you can see your command line now has identifier in front of it. And if I go into one of the four areas that has a command line indicator, that's live, blind, patch, and groups, it will identify what screen the command line information will apply to. Queue lists are now permanently linked to a playback. So if you're working in an environment where you're firing queue lists off of macros, they no longer have to be assigned to a playback. One of the major improvements is a more touch-friendly graphical user interface. You can see some of the spin edit boxes have much larger buttons from which to change. If we go into system properties, we can see all of these have been adjusted to a much more touch-friendly environment. Certain tabs across the side will have tabs within to better help organize all of the options within a particular tabbed environment. If we go to queue lists, this has also been redone. Any queue that has a purple arrow will have a pull down that is much more manageable, and all of the columns that used to give you a floating window should you activate it has now been moved into the details window with tabbed environments. The group display has been similarly reorganized as the queue list window has. If you have a purple arrow, it will give you a more touch-friendly pull-down option, and anything that previously would have been a pop-out window now shows up in the group detail at the bottom of that window. The effect list has been similarly improved. So if I look at one of the library effects, the attribute is in the proper pull down list, and there are new options in DMX offset and scale that show up in a pull down. We've added soft keys to some of the command line operations. So if you press record, you'll get soft keys that will pop up above. If I then press Q, it's going to show me soft keys for recording queues. If I press group, soft keys for recording groups. If I press sub, soft keys for recording subs. I'm going to back this out, and update also has soft keys that have been added. In addition to that, just pressing the Q key will show a list of queue lists should you want to edit a queue with a different queue list. In the options pull down, we have a new feature called Save a Copy. This will save a copy of the show file, most likely to a USB stick or any other hard drive. The important thing is it will not move the file pointer on a regular save. Profile effects now apply to the underlying intensity value. So for example, I select 1 through 5, I go to my effect library, and I activate the square wave wrap. Now, I didn't give it a value, but it's going to default to going to full on the effect. However, if I say at 5 enter, now it will go to 50%. I could also range values, so at 10 through 90, enter, and now that's the value it will use for the effect. So the group and the palette pull down have been reorganized. So the group pull down is going to have any groups that have been built. For example, let's say I want to select my LED group. Now that has selected them. Now under palettes, you have the first tab you have is apply group, meaning that if you click on that, you will apply the level that has been stored. If no level had been stored, then it will default to full. In addition, in the palettes, you have the different tabs for your different attribute families. So if I go to color, I can apply the color palettes as they have been stored based upon what I have selected. In addition, both of these can be detached and docked onto a second monitor, making it very user-friendly to have your group window next to your palette window docked. That way you can select your groups, then apply the group or apply the palette. So the view pull down has been reorganized. You've got blind, display fixture, complex timing, expanded, compact, classic, magic sheet, faders, and intelligent lighting view for your main window. Then you have a pull out for open a new view of channels. These will be floating windows that can be docked on the second monitor. Open a new view of selected channels, so just based on what you have selected. Split view of channels will put the window down here at the bottom of the main window. Open a blind view of channels, these options in blind. And we have a new one here called Open Color Picker. So this color picker can be moved and docked onto the second monitor to be there full time. So here we have channel formatting, and you have these options, as well as the display option, and you have these two groupings of options here. One of the improvements that's been added to effects is that a cue that has an effect running, here Q5 has effect 1, we'll go into the cue list, display, and if we look under effects in the Q5, we'll see that the fade in and the fade out time are identified as cue, meaning they will use the cue time. So in future editing, if you change the time on Q5 or in the next cue, which is fade out, it will still automatically adjust the fade in and fade out time of the effect for you. Streaming ACN universes can now have their priorities set per universe, so you can have individual priorities on your streaming ACN universes. Effects can now be copied from the command line by using the copy key. I'm going to type effects 4 copy from 2 for effect 2, enter, and that has been copied. In the Magic Sheet view, we'll click on edit. One can now add, if I go to miscellaneous, a group button. So you decide what group number you want, and it even brings in the name of it, so that if I click on it, and I go back to the classic view, it has selected that group. There's a wonderful new Cue List Properties button here in the sidebar with some wonderful new options. So tracking enabled during playback, you can turn this off so that no tracked values will output during playback. You can change the behavior to these different cue list behavior options. You can now do a go, stop, back, and reset shortcut for each individual cue list. You can also assign an executable submaster, an inhibitive submaster, and a rate submaster to every single cue list. So this adds a lot of features to enhance live event production. We've added a default layout in the window layout manager. So selecting this and applying will restore all floating window layouts to their out-of-the-box position and size. We've added a console key mode when using NeoPC. You can press the live button in front of the command line and the console key icon will appear, meaning that when I press keys like R for record, the entire command will appear, rather than, if I turn it off, if I type R, I just get R and I'll need to type out the word record. We've now added the ability, if you're going to record over an existing submaster, I'll allow you to either replace the submaster, convert it to a chase effect, convert it to a cue list, which will take the first state, convert it to Q1, and then create the second state as Q2, or you can cancel the operation. When doing a goto on a queue that has a follow and you want to just get to the end of all running follow queues, you can now hit goto twice and it will say goto complete on the command line, and I will say goto complete 5, and notice that it jumps to Q6, which is the end of the auto follow sequence. If you're using scene breaks as we are, you can use goto to go to a scene. So I've hit goto once, twice for goto complete, 3 times. So if I want to go to scene 2, then I just hit 2 and that goes to the first queue of scene 2 right after the scene break. Encoders have now been implemented to aid in timecode editing. So from the queue list window, Options, Open Visual Timecode Editor, and I now have my top encoder changes what queue. My second encoder adjusts the timecode per second, where shift and the timecode will change per frame. My third encoder will zoom graphic in and out, and the fourth one will scroll position on the timeline. Submaster flash buttons now ignore master fade time. So I've got a few channels selected. Before I change them, I'm going to move my master fade time. I'm going to hit full and we see they're running at that master fade time, but I'll go back and go to flash buttons and see they ignore it. We've added a new item in the options menu of the patch window, and that is save current patch as system default. That way, if you have a particular patch in your theater, if you do a new show, it's going to keep that patch rather than starting you from a blank show file. Thanks for watching this Neo operational video for software version 3.9 changes. Go to the Strand website for many more videos on Neo programming and operation, and here is a list of additional changes.